Hamitakiapi, Chantewashtan Nape, Chuzapi, Sto, Oakley Jandra Machiapi, Kuichasa Mataha. Hello, my relatives. I greet you all with a very happy heart. My name is Oakley Jandrew, and I am from the Lorbril Sioux tribe. Before joining Native Americans in philanthropy, I had the privilege of serving my home community as a program director for our Lakota language revitalization programs. The Lakota language has taught me and continues to teach me our history, our values, and our way of life. Those teachings are something that I carry with me every day, especially now that I have made the move to Washington, D.C., where I hope to contribute to advancing tribal priorities while staying rooted in where I come from. I recently joined Native Americans in Philanthropy as the Executive Support Services Manager, where I provide strategic administration and operational support to NAP's executive leadership. I am very thankful to be on this broadcast with you all and look forward to our conversation. To get us started today, I would like to welcome NAP's Education Resource Facilitator, our MES moderator, Shondine Vanderveer. Shondine?
Yeah, Oakley. Got bena shike do shidene. She Shondine Vanderveer Ganishia, Bilagana Nishlin, Dutch eating Bashishteen, Bilagana Tishche, Sinajini Tashinale. Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Shondine Vanderveer and I'm honored to be holding space with you all this morning. I serve as Native Americans in Philanthropy's Education Programs Manager, and I will be moderating our session here today. I am a citizen of the Navajo Nation, though I'm joining y'all from Washington, D.C. on the traditional homelands of the Anacostan and Piscataway peoples. Again, so happy to be here with y'all, and I just want to take a moment to thank Oakley again for welcoming us into this space and grounding us in today's discussion. It's always a pleasure to have different members of our staff join, so I'm very happy that she got to share a little bit more about her unique experience and delve deeper into the work that she continues to move forward as a part of Native Americans Philanthropy's office management and higher level administrative support to our executive leadership team. I sincerely hope more of our network gets the opportunity to work with her in the future. Again, it's my pleasure to welcome y'all into this space today virtually as we dedicate the next hour and a half to exploring the funding landscape behind Native arts and culture. It's important to note before we dive into the conversation here today that no matter your background, professional or personal, there is a place for you here and a responsibility to help support this work moving forward. So again, so appreciative that you all are offering some of your time here today, both as a participant as well as our speakers who are joining us today. Indigenous cultures specifically have always been alive, evolving with our peoples and continuing to thrive because of our artists and our culture bearers as they continue to practice, to share, teach, safeguard, and reimagine them. Across generations, our people carry forward traditional practices while simultaneously creating new expressions of Indigenous identity, of creativity, and of connection. And so today we'll delve a little bit deeper into the barriers that currently exist within the philanthropic support landscape for these artists and culture bearers, and really identify the changes that can be made to better nurture a culture of community and of strength and of sustainable funding. So throughout our next hour and a half together, we'll explore what it means for funding practices to be more aligned with our own Indigenous values, what it looks like to center relationship building, as well as focusing on long-term partnership rather than simply transactional investments. We'll also hear how artists, how Native-led organizations and regional art hubs, as well as philanthropic partners in this space, are working in true collaboration to strengthen these pathways for our future generations to continue this critical work. So it is our hope collectively that today's discussion leaves all of us, again, whether you're a funder, a policymaker, a nonprofit leader, or an artist yourself, with a deeper understanding of how investing in Native arts and culture is also an investment in community well-being, in economic opportunity, of cultural continuity, and of self-determination in its heart of hearts. So to start off our introductions for those that will help guide this discussion today, it is my pleasure to welcome our junior moderator for this member education session. If you're familiar with our previous webinars, Native Americans in Philanthropy continues to uplift our Native youth in more decision-making spaces. And so we welcome our emerging leaders that are pooled from our Native Youth Grantmakers third cohort to help guide our collective focus to better support these future generations from their own lived experiences and their dedication to protecting our strong communities. So as we ourselves find new ways to engage these youth, we encourage you to also find new ways to implement your own methods of uplifting their perspectives and voices in real and, again, sustainable ways. So I'm going to pass it off to our junior moderator and Native Youth Grantmaker and give her an opportunity to welcome you all in her own words and introduce themselves. Evan, over to you.
Thank you, Bilahuk. Nahan pipi, kiseha hia mikinko hanase, mima ama achute yasa nakas kaiwa. Mima puchkanompa akilani. Ohipamani owatiwa. Good day, everyone. My name is Kisei Hahie, but I also go by the name Evan Richardson. I'm a proud citizen of the Halawasponi people of Hollister, North Carolina, but I'm also proudly carrying my adopted Kiowa people. Today, I'm serving as your junior moderator from the 2026 class of Native Youth Grantmakers. I'm very excited to be in this space as we lead conversations that revolve around artwork within philanthropic spaces and just having discussions on where we see the future of artwork in spaces like this. So without further ado, I would like to pass the conversation back to Sean Dean and see what we can get into when it comes to sharing our stories with each other. Bilahuk.
Oh yeah, Evan, beautiful introduction and very excited. Let's dive in. Laura, Heidi, and Sean each have incredible experience in this space, leading across their communities and within the philanthropic sector. So I will also let them share a little bit more about what perspectives they're bringing to today's conversation. Y'all, as you're called, please feel free to introduce yourself as well as your affiliations, however you feel comfortable. I'm gonna start off with Laura, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
OCO, hello, I'm Dr. Laura Evans. I'm a citizen of Cherokee Nation. I have a doctorate in Native American art history. I was in academia for more than 20 years teaching Native American art history, largely to Native students for about 14 years. And I've been in the Native arts funding space for the last 3.5 years. Although I was doing a lot of from scratch grant-funded new kinds of programming to support Native artists through the Institute of American Indian Arts before I came to First Peoples Fund. I am physically based most of the time in Santa Fe, New Mexico, though I'm coming to you today from our headquarters in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us, Laura. I will pass it off to Heidi to also introduce herself and what perspective she's bringing today.
Sure. Thank you all for having me today. Yat Esh A Heidi Brando Unishia Hawaiian Nishklinto Todich Ni Bashichin Hawaiian A Dashicheto Nashkali Dashnali. Hello everyone. My name is Heidi Brando. I am Dene and Kanaka Maoli. I am a multidisciplinary artist. And I have also been a part of the Institute of American Indian Art as an educator in the Master of Fine Arts program, Studio Arts. And I've also worked at First Peoples Fund. So I have some experience in supporting artists through nonprofits, Native nonprofits. And then I've also have this, over 20 years of experience of working in the arts as an artist and writer, curator, primarily based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, but coming to you today from Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for offering your time. I know the time difference currently is crazy, so we really appreciate you staying up late and to join this conversation. And Sean, I offer it to you to introduce yourself and what perspectives you're bringing to the table today.
Sure. Thanks, Shandine. My name's Sean Buffington. I am the Vice President of Programs at the Henry Luce Foundation. Henry Luce Foundation is based in New York City in Lenapehoking. I myself right now, I'm in upstate New York in a place called Germantown. And I am settler descended. I am not an artist, but I have spent a number of years now in the philanthropic sector supporting, making an effort to provide support to Indigenous communities through the Luce Foundation's Indigenous Knowledge Program, which is a program that I created about 8 years ago. And is now led very ably by Ray Foxworth, who is our program director. So very glad to be here today and excited to be part of the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, again, I will offer gratitude throughout this conversation. So be forewarned, you will hear thank yous again and again. But we are so appreciative of y'all for offering your time and a little bit of your knowledge in this space today. For those of us that are joining, you'll notice that we intentionally welcomed a very diverse range of perspectives for our conversation today. I want to start us off with an acknowledgement from your particular experience, whether as an artist, as Heidi mentioned, as an allied funder from the Henry Luce Foundation, or as a Native-led grant maker in this space. How would you describe today's funding landscape? That it can include opportunities and challenges that define the moment we're in today, but I want to start off our conversation with an acknowledgement of what it feels like in your day-to-day. And I'll offer it to Laura to start us off.
Sure. First off, it's very volatile, as many things are these days. But there are also some ways in which this moment feels familiar historically, because our communities have been through an awful lot politically for hundreds of years, and sweeping government changes affect our lives, whether we're on reservation or off a reservation. So in a lot of ways, in our organization, when we're talking about these times, they feel familiar. It's while to many it feels like a rupture, this is like, oh, we know this feeling, we know how to deal with it, we know how to keep working on building community, that there's protection and safety by coming together. So really doubling down on our mission and values and committing to our communities has been how we've been handling this. While we have seen some funding fly out the door because of grant clawbacks that were originally federal funding, we've been able to replace every dollar that was taken away. And we're operating in a very, from a place of abundance and creating stability rather than contributing to further instability.
That's a beautiful way to start off our conversation, Laura. And it may also sound familiar to many in our own network. Our current leader, Eric Stegman, our CEO, always reiterates that our Native nations work in generations, not administrations. So I really appreciate you reiterating that notion, especially in this space. Sean, I saw a lot of nodding from your end. Does what Laura described also resonate with you and your perspective from the Henry Luce Foundation?
Yes, absolutely. I was mostly nodding because I was really glad that Laura was talking about Native resilience and persistence, and so it was great to hear that. And it was actually inspiring to me because my immediate reaction to the question was maybe a little bit pessimistic, that I think from the point of view of foundation funding, I wish I were seeing more recognition of the need for support for Native arts and culture, and even beyond Native arts and culture, other kinds of needs that Indigenous communities have. I have seen there have been a couple of foundations. I mean, for example, the MacArthur Foundation not that long ago created a new program supporting Indigenous communities. That's great news. There have been a couple of other foundations that have kind of begun to edge in that direction. So I've been really glad to see that, but the progress has just been, in my view, has been so slow on the part of philanthropy. And unfortunately, the moment that we're in right now, I think, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but it has some bad effects. The efforts to respond to the crisis of democracy, I think, has shifted the attention of a lot of funders away from some things that maybe they were beginning to get interested in or had been supporting for a long time. They've shifted some of those resources, and I understand that, but I also worry about that, and worry a little bit that there's some short-sightedness there.
Absolutely. I appreciate you acknowledging. I recognize that most in our community will also share those feelings of pessimism, because those are very real and valid responses to the restriction of a lot of funding that we're seeing currently. So I appreciate you being vulnerable and naming that. Again, it is felt throughout our communities. Heidi, as your perspective, I know you're bringing a lot of different expertise with you here today, both as an artist yourself, as well as collaborating with a lot of the organizations that we've already named previously. Is there any additions that you would make to our beginning landscape analysis for the funding of Native arts and culture? Would you like to reiterate anything that's already been said?
I mean, I think I agree with both perspectives, right? Like, I mean, I feel like, yes, 100% that these moments are not new for Native people, Native communities, and that it's a really good reminder for us to continue to lean into each other as Native people, and to really try to find ways that sort of decentralize those funding resources, you know, like finding new ways to support one another. At the same time, I'm also aware that, you know, as Sean had mentioned, that I think maybe folks in sort of the larger philanthropic landscape are maybe more reluctant or uneasy about, you know, supporting these initiatives and making not just like a one-off sort of support situation, but more sustainable long-term relationships with Native organizations and communities at large. And so I guess as it trickles down to the artists who are impacted by this, I mean, I just think it's always going to be really competitive. I think if you're applying for certain opportunities, grants, fellowships, and I think those stakes have gotten even higher. And that's also by virtue of the fact that we have so many people, and this is amazing actually, that are incredibly talented and have been doing incredible work out in the world. So that, coupled with the fact that, you know, the folks are tightening their sort of waistband, if you will, and like, you know, wanting to spend maybe less to contribute to these programs to support them. So it's a little bit of a tricky atmosphere, I would say.
Yeah, striking that balance is critical, and the needle is always moving. But I will agree with you. The fact that so many of our communities are creative and talented is the best problem to have. But making sure that we can support them, again, as you said, in a sustainable way is critical. We're gonna lean into a little bit of that discussion of operating on an abundance mindset as opposed to scarcity, which is, again, a very real prevalent issue within the funding landscape. But I want to give time specifically to the immediate reactions that many people have, both within this funding space and people who are just being introduced into the conversation. When people hear arts and culture, they often immediately think of supporting the most visible part of the work. I mean, the art aspect of it, the physical artistic creation. I'm interested, again, leaning into this perspectives that you're bringing to the table to get today. What other areas are equally important when we are thinking of informing these funding strategies? They could be professional development support, they could be technical assistance, or larger infrastructure mindsets, just to give some examples. But I'll offer that to the floor to get to allow anyone to get us started.
I can jump in quickly. I think two areas that I think are crucial and don't get thought about in the context of arts and culture are one, language, language preservation and persistence, or restoration in some cases, revitalization, and land, land rematriation. Those are, I think, two areas that are, as I think at least we think about it at Luce, absolutely crucial to Indigenous culture and Indigenous knowledges, Indigenous identities. And yet I think those are areas that certainly I think philanthropy has been maybe slow to engage with. Especially on the land side, I think there's just a kind of sense of, gosh, we can't go there. Maybe a little bit less so on the language side, but I think the language side can feel so overwhelming because it's such a steep hill that needs to be climbed. On the other hand, place and language are essential to, they are the basis of Indigenous community identity, and investing in those, I think, is absolutely critical.
And finding ways to articulate that interconnectedness, especially with funders in this space. Again, people may recognize the long-standing call for philanthropy to broaden their understanding of funding, especially when interacting with Native communities, because it is so interconnected. We obviously don't live single issue lives. We cannot fund single issues. And I really appreciate you bringing up those two aspects, as you said, language preservation and cultivation, as well as land and place. Those are absolutely essential. I offer it, Heidi, Laura, if you want to add any aspects of these particular areas that you think are equally important to the physical artistic creation.
I can go real quick. I mean, I think obviously funding for artists that is related to some type of project or outcome. I know that there's some funding channel or like opportunities where folks can brush up on their business or entrepreneurial skills, professional development, which I think are really, vital, especially among folks in our communities, because sort of access to those types of basic fundamentals are sort of limited or a little spotty. But I think that organizations might also consider opportunities that might not just have like a product oriented outcome. Like for example, Forge Project, I think, is doing an outstanding job. Obviously, their awards are unrestricted. And I think those are really life-changing for a lot of people, right? I know they're not the only one, but it's like the one that comes to mind. And are also like artists in residence programs that serve primarily Native communities or Native people, maybe stepping away from sort of this production element as that being sort of the sole outcome or sort of necessity as part of the program. So these kind of things, just kind of giving folks the flexibility to sort of, make the choices that are necessary that are going to support their careers in whatever ways are necessary, I think is, a move that would be really helpful for Native artists.
Yeah. Allowing them the agency, essentially respecting that they know the support that will be most effective to them is incredibly essential. Laura, I know that obviously First Peoples Fund offers such a wide array of resources that we have already identified. Have you experienced any that, communities have really expressed need for in addition to them? Are there any specific ones that you're called on often to uplift?
One of the things that's quite different in the Native arts and culture landscape is that, well, when people from outside our communities hear arts and culture, they probably are thinking fine art. And they're thinking of the arts industrial complex. And our art world is so much bigger than that. If you think of it as in the mainstream, artists are specialists and very few people are artists, and that's by design. Very few people get access to the resources, get into the collections, get the big funding, become blue chip artists, have access to all the publishing, the research about their work. There's a whole other economy and system and an ecology of Native art where it is normal for all of us to make things. So if you take a cultural norm, people don't make things, they buy them. And our cultural norm is we make things as part of our culture. We make things together. So like single authorship, so to speak, isn't as much of a norm. We collaborate a lot. And the things we make have community purpose. And that's where it ties in, like the language, the land, plants, animals, foodways, everything is tied up together within that. So that's a completely different structural relationship that's very different from the mainstream art world. That doesn't mean we don't still need access to things like catalog raisonnés of Native artists, but there's a whole lot underneath it that isn't as visible as the fine art. And First Peoples Fund does a lot of supporting of that invisible component, as well as the visible, the things that go out into the world and get shared cross-culturally.
I wish I had started with you, Laura, because that mindset shift is so critical. And I really appreciate you expressing the need for even funders who have existed in this space for, decades, or people who are just, again, being introduced into this conversation. That mindset shift can really open up a lot of opportunities. So I appreciate you expressing that specifically. We've touched on the interconnectedness and how it is impossible to single out arts and culture without also talking about so many other aspects of need within Native communities. I'm interested how each of you, or on behalf of your organization, communicates the interconnectedness of arts and culture to your community, whether that be your tribal nation or the organization's community that you represent. If you could share any stories or particular approaches that have been most effective in helping others really understand that reciprocal tie. I'll open it again if Heidi, maybe you want to offer that some starting points for us.
Sure. Just thinking about sort of the ways that some of the projects might be different than, say, like a traditional art project. I had received a grant from the New York Foundation for the Arts to support a project related to, the Navajo die chart. And the project is very specific to community. And it's thinking about the ways that we continue to live on our homelands in the future, really challenging this idea of what is considered to be futurism, and how I think the current framing is very limiting to our actual communities back home. And so thinking about how a project like this doesn't just have an outcome of like an art exhibition, or doesn't just have like a painting as a final product. Like how can our projects then be more applicable to our everyday lives back home? Like, how can our people also benefit from thinking about these pre-existing Indigenous knowledge systems? And so the fact that this granting organization was cool, and I also have to give credit to 516. I also got the, oh gosh, I forget what the title is offhand of the other grant to help support this project. But it's, I guess, just kind of thinking about that. I think my methodology is entirely different in that I really want to make sure that this project in particular, and I think in probably all projects, sort of have this sort of longer term impact with our actual community. So I'm really thinking about like who is my audience, like who am I working for, who am I working with, who does it serve? And so, getting back, it's also bringing me back home. It's allowing me to be back there on the res, like learning and bringing that knowledge back to my community here in Santa Fe or at Santa Fe. So yeah, I mean, just kind of thinking about the different ways in which perhaps our creative projects might have this sort of more holistic approach in terms of how we kind of think about community. I don't know that that's necessarily true for everyone, and I think everyone works in a different way, and that's totally fine. But I think now more, I think at this phase of my career, I'm really thinking more intentionally about, how do we continue to push forward our Indigenous knowledge systems, and how do we serve our community in more sustainable and caring ways.
Thank you, Heidi, for really centering, again, that responsibility that we each hold to each other. Really reinforcing that takes priority above everything else is very important to include in these conversations. I'm interested, Laura, if that resonates with you as a larger organization, or if there are differences in the way that you articulate, again, that interconnectedness with your larger community.
The concept of it being an Indigenous arts ecology has been really useful for us because it gets at all of these different interconnected layers. It includes the concept of reciprocity as part of that. It guides us in how we relate with other arts organizations, how we support the development of new Native arts and culture organizations in communities. And also supporting artists at various points of their career in different ways, and supporting projects that people won't make any money off of, for example, because it's a community activity. The point isn't profitability or necessarily professional growth, but building community, maintaining community, building relationships. And even for our individual awards, our fellowship awards, we have an annual fellows convening where we bring everyone together, and we work very hard and very consistently to help artists build relationships with Native artists in other communities across other disciplines, to support collaborative projects, to set the ground for people to grow and experience, whether that's within their tribe or between tribal boundaries or with the general public. We also do that by trying to build things that operate completely differently than mainstream models. An example of that is our Wichakhi Olawan recording studio in our Oglala Lakota art space on the Pine Ridge Reservation, just outside of Kyle. We have a state-of-the-art recording studio. And rather than following the conventional recording studio model, we do not charge for use of the recording studio. It's offered free to members of the community, including all the engineering expertise, training on the equipment, whether it's people wanting to record family stories, or they're laying beats beats, or they want to create musical pieces, or it's performance poetry, or it's recording in the community. We have mobile equipment and can go out and do recordings at events for people. And we offer all of that free of charge. And it's already made a big difference. And I don't know, maybe we have the potential to disrupt some of how the music industry is operating by setting a completely different example.
That is such an incredibly cool resource. And I will note for anyone who registered for the conversation today, you will get some more supportive resources to really dive into how you can access these resources if you're in the area. We did not uplift the recording studio specifically, but I encourage anyone who is interested in, funding, different models that are similar. That's an incredible example. So I really appreciate you uplifting that, Laura. Sean, I'll pass it to you. If there are any similarities, again, acknowledging that the Henry Luce Foundation has partnered with a lot of the organizations that we've noted in this space, have you learned any specific approaches or storytelling techniques that have helped you articulate, again, that interconnectedness of arts and culture?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes, but I'm actually going to answer a slightly different question, or rather a prior question, I think, which is recognizing how little most settler-descended people know about Native history, Native arts and culture, Native politics, is an enormous barrier to the kinds of engagement that you're talking about, right? That Lara and Heidi have just been talking about, right? There's just a baseline of knowledge and understanding that is not there. And so when as a foundation, a non-Indigenous controlled foundation, when we're trying to make an argument to our board about a particular grant, or if you go back 8 years when we launched this initiative in the first place, it's a really steep uphill battle just to sort of explain what it is that we're talking about. I mean, we recently made actually our first grant to a non-federally recognized tribe, directly to a non-federally recognized tribe. And in doing that, we basically had to explain to our board what that means, right? What is federal recognition? What does it mean not to be federally recognized? What does federal recognition entitle a Native nation to? In what ways does it inhibit it? What's the kind of colonial history there and context? It was sort of like starting from scratch, right? And it was worthwhile to do that work and to do the explanation, and they did approve the grant. But it's just an example that I think a lot of the kind of basic context, even just the basic language terminology that I think Indigenous people, many Indigenous people kind of take for granted because it's just the world that they grew up in, is really not, I mean, shamefully so, not understood, recognized by settler descended people. And so there's this big barrier to get over of just kind of basic introductory knowledge before you can start to have the kinds of more sophisticated conversations that I think Heidi and Lara were just talking about.
Shondine, if I might add something really quickly, which is that I just want to mention that when I had done some consulting work with the Coe Center for Art, which is now no longer with us, but at the time, the funding that we had gotten from the Henry Luce Foundation actually helped significantly to return more than half of the collection, to these communities that had not had them home for however long, right? Generations, probably. And so to be part of that process of inviting them to come to the collection, to re-engage with these cultural materials, to bring them back home, to see that work happening. I mean, I think what Sean is mentioning is important, is that, it's like this struggle to have to articulate the significance of those types of how this funding is going to support work like that. And I just wanted to mention that we were one of the benefactors, a couple years ago, and it was really, important work to be part of, and just great to witness. So thank you. Thank you, Henry Lewis. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks for saying that.
I was going to make
beautiful circle.
a similar remark. When I was doing my PhD in Native American art history, at the time I hadn't realized that there weren't any other Native people who had got a PhD in that specific field. And I got a Henry David Luce dissertation dissertation award from University of New Mexico. And that was in 2004. And it was just about the only, other than like $1,000 a year from American Indian Graduate Center, that was about the only funding that was available, because at the time, the scholarships for Native students were in like engineering and medicine, and nobody wanted to fund art history. But my career might have looked very different if I did not finish that PhD degree. And that helped position me to do the work that I'm doing now, where First Peoples Fund is putting roughly $6 million a year into the Indigenous arts ecology. And it, like, some of the returns on foundation expenditures you might not be able to see for 20 years. It's things aren't in a 1 year or a 3 year like results cycle.
Yeah.
And just to Lara, I'm so glad you said that, because I think that's such a good point. So many foundations are very focused on the impact, seeing their investments in a very immediate way. And this is, Shandine, what you were talking about maybe before, about, how we conceive of arts and culture as being about the material production or a project orientation, as Heidi was saying. It's so important for foundations and funders generally to kind of recognize that you can't, none of this was planned. The comments that Heidi and Lara just made, I had no idea that either of you had connections to lose funding in the past. Well, that's what it should be, right? You should not, as a funder, not know, right, where the investments are going to bear fruit, and to be able to have a conversation with someone, today, who benefited from an investment, 22 years ago, Lara, is incredible. And you see those ramifications. It's just, it's incredibly powerful.
What a beautiful way. We're talking about interconnectedness. I myself, as the organizer with this moderation, did not know how deep those roots are within this funding area. So it's beautiful to see it actually materialize, in real time. We talked so much about the specific mindset of operating in community and really reinforcing those relationships that open these doors to both funding structures or opportunities just in general, but also to get, relationship building with people who share similar missions with your own work. I'm going to open this up to all of us because we did note earlier in our conversation that this is an area where funding is highly competitive. Is there any way that you in particular have worked to navigate or even to shift that focus and instead encourage mutual support, these trust-based relationships, these sharing opportunities with your community, as Laura said earlier? I'm really interested to see how you've worked to reframe that focus, again, operating from an abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity-based one.
I could go real quick. Oh.
Go ahead.
I'll just go really quickly, which is that, as as a faculty in the MFA program at II, we have these sort of long-term relationships with our students who are either in the program or had graduated. And in fact, just the other day, I had just reviewed like an application, that is a former student and now like amazing best friend needed help just to kind of look at these applications and sort of look over her work. And so I think I'm always open to helping support other artists to gain access to any type of opportunities. It's always been sort of the mission and goal of the work that I've done in my life. I mean, when we started the Harvard Indigenous Design Collective, it was really that. It was really to just open the door a little bit longer for other people to come through and to also get that recognition of how design has always existed in our communities, that it's not something new that we just figured out, but that this is, the whole design field is based upon our culture and our history. So I think everything for me is really about that. And also when I was with, First Peoples Fund, for example, that was one of sort of the things I loved the most, was uplifting the stories of other artists that were in the First Peoples Fund network, right? I think those were the things that I took the most pride in, was sharing out their stories, however visible or invisible they might be. Making sure that they always were informed of like any opportunities that are available. So yeah, I just want to be a good relative, if you will, however cheesy that may be. But I'm sincere about it. I want all of us to win and to do well. And I also recognize the struggle, how difficult those processes can be. So yeah.
It's cheesy for a reason, Heidi. I agree. It is a part of recognizing, again, that responsibility that you have with all of your peers, truly, to bring them with you and widen that access to resources, funding, whatever it may be. Laura, you wanted to jump in earlier, so I'm gonna pass it to you.
Yes. So First Peoples Fund has always been very collaborative and working in partnerships, from our founding president and CEO, Lori Poirier, to our new CEO, almost been with us for a year, Tina Kukan. They've always emphasized working in partnership. So whether that was, so we have Intercultural Leadership Institute, which is an organization that brings together BIPOC arts and culture leaders for annual gatherings and helps build those intercultural relationships across like all the underrepresented groups in the US. But also we work closely with Native Arts and Culture Foundation, with ATOM, which Heidi is part of a project that ATOM is doing right now that is one of those big projects that helps us build formal relationships between organizations, that pools our knowledge together. And then First Peoples Fund is also part of a consortium, a collaborative of 12 BIPOC arts organizations that are being funded by Wallace Foundation. And we're working collaboratively, and altogether that's putting $18 million into a BIPOC arts ecology over a 2-year period. So it's from the beginning that kind of collaboration has been baked in, and we're really leaning into that in these times too, because working together is one of the best ways to provide protection and build a sense of community. And talking about the foundations that are shifting to focus on democracy, I don't think people often realize that democracy has community at its foundation, and we have to find ways to come together, collaborate, and really relate well with one another as relatives, regardless of what our cultural background is.
That's beautiful, Laura. Thank you again. Sean, I offer it to you as well. Again, many of these approaches may resonate with your team members who have, done so much work across the decades in this area, but I offer it to you if there's anything new that you would like to add again or reiterate.
Yeah, I was going to actually come at it from the point of view of funders and collaboration among funders. I think it may be surprising to some to know, but there is ego among funders, and sometimes there's a sense of well, gosh, Mellon already funded X, and so we don't need to fund X, or Tara funded Y, so we shouldn't fund Y. We want to be doing our own thing. I think one of the things that we've tried to do at Luce, and I know a number of foundations are trying to do the same thing, is to say, you know what, we don't need to own credit for these investments. The goal is to increase the dollars that are going to support important work and meaningful work. And so I think beginning to kind of back out of that that ego a little bit, that ego position as a funder, to say, okay, Foundation X over there, you guys had an incredible idea. We want to chip in on that, right? We don't need to be, we don't need to have our name up in lights. We want to support that because you guys had a great idea and you introduced us to an amazing project or an amazing initiative. So we want to be part of that. And I think that is becoming a little bit more prevalent in philanthropy, but there's still a ways to go, but it is something I think that I'm very proud to see happening more.
I love that, and again, I really appreciate you being transparent with our community here today. But progress is progress. We can acknowledge the steps or the advancements that we've made while also recognizing that there is quite a long journey ahead of us. So recognizing where we're at today is always the first step. I again truly appreciate all of your thoughts in our conversation so far. And as we're settled into our space here, it's my honor to transition moderation over to our junior moderator now. If I could have Evan, beautiful. She's going to offer some of her own reflections and questions to the panel here today. So I will cede the microphone and give it over to Evan.
Bila Hook, thank you. I've really been enjoying hearing the conversations that have been had so far and just listening to the individual knowledges that each one of you carry. So Bila Hook for that. One of the main things we've been talking about is sustainability in relationship, whether that be from an organizational standpoint and how you interact with your grantees, or whether it's in community and with place. And one of the biggest conversations that's coming up in Indian country now is the use of AI. So I really want to dive a little bit deeper into how you've seen AI impact the work that you're doing artistically and organizationally in Indian country. And I'm specifically interested because we have so many different panelists from different backgrounds, whether that be from an education standpoint, from a nonprofit standpoint, or just being an artist yourself. So whoever would like to kick us off, I would greatly appreciate that.
I will say that we have, in coming from the perspective of a funder, and maybe this just reflects the fact that Luce isn't maybe as technologically advanced as other funders. I haven't really seen a lot of impact of AI. I have heard some grantees and potential grantees talking about using AI as a way to kind of streamline the proposal development process, which I think is fine. From our point of view as a funder, we haven't really taken advantage of that. There's been just a little teeny bit of work on our part and sort of thinking about how we might be able to use technology, whether this is AI or other kinds of technology, to sort of make better use and understand better our own data. So our, the information that we have in our database about the grants that we've made, et cetera, are there ways for us to sort of identify connections among grantees, to trace the progress of people across grants or across grantee organizations. So that's a question I think that we have, but we have not made a lot of progress at this point in trying to push that forward.
That's very interesting. And I recently watched an interview where they said that AI is just a collection of data, and data can only look backwards. But when it comes to artwork, it's constantly looking forward and imagining new futures. So I'm interested to see how it continues to mold the spaces that we're interacting with, specifically when it comes to art, especially since there are so many different perspectives in Indian country on how AI is shaping the art world, or lack thereof, and tearing it down. So thank you for that. Heidi or Laura, whichever one of you guys want to pick it up.
I mean, I'll say that generally speaking, I mean, I remember when I was in graduate school, that I guess that was like kind of the first experience where I was in a place where institutionally they were supporting and subscribing for us to have access to Grammarly, for example, right? And so it's been a tool that I continue to use, because it's just always there in the background, right? So I found it to be really helpful for just basic, catching those slight errors. But I guess for me as an artist, I mean, I think it's tricky because I see people in our communities who are using these tools to create their own logos or to create materials for their small businesses and so on. And I get it, not everyone has access to a designer or sort of a team to help them kind of walk through that process. So, but at the same time, I mean, I guess I have an issue with data centers and sort of how this is impacting our access to water and the impact to our communities and impact to the land. And so, I mean, we're seeing all this right now happening, right? Like we're seeing all of these places. I mean, I think it was either Washington Post or New York Times just published an article like 1 or 2 days ago about this and how data centers are impacting Native communities. In the Southwest in particular, as we all know, that we already are at sort of a long-standing drought situation. The Rio Grande doesn't even reach Albuquerque anymore, so it's basically halfway cut at this point. So that would be my main concern with AI is how is this impacting the land? How is this impacting our access to water? I mean, I hope people aren't using it maybe to create artwork that's going to be submitted for an application. I feel like they're really glaringly obvious. But I guess my main concern is really about how the impacts to land and resources.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think, like you guys have mentioned in the conversation before, we have a responsibility to our communities, and that's just not our people alone. That's our land, that's our water, that's our animal kin. So thank you for bringing up that perspective. I think it's interesting when we talk about AI and art. Like I said, there are a lot of interesting takes in Indian country right now. And because we do have those responsibilities, I also wonder where Native artists have a hand in these conversations, considering so many people are now using AI to generate art. So thank you for your perspective on that. I think it's something very interesting to stay mindful of within the processes where we're building community and how art is being integrated how AI is being integrated as a tool for that. Laura, if you have anything you would like to add.
Sure. I have two considerations that First Peoples Fund has been particularly dealing with. And the first is that the software systems that are the backbone of a granting organization are not necessarily Native friendly. And there's a lot of potential for misuse of our data. So we are keeping AI out of our systems as much as possible because we feel there's potential politically for our data to be used against Native people. So we keep a wall around our data to prevent that. But the other impact we're seeing, which is a very negative impact, is we are having to spend time and effort weeding out fraudulent applications that have been created by AI. And we've been talking with other arts organizations that are finding the same thing. It's for me as an art historian who I've trained in recognizing historic styles of art from all over North America, and some even in South America, though that's not a specialization of mine. I can look and see wow, this person is saying they're from this tribe in this region, but the work that they're showing us in their work samples are from 4 or 5 different regions with materials that don't make sense together. And then I do some research and I find out, oh, they've used AI to fake their tribal enrollment documents. Or they've used AI to make fake artwork. So that's why it looks like a mishmash of different tribal styles and materials, is because AI is just creating what it thinks Native art looks like. So that's a waste of our resources and our time, and it makes us approach applications with skepticism, and it costs us resources and money. And so we're talking with other art organizations and with some of the system support about looking for tools that can help us prevent that from happening as much.
I think it's really interesting that you bring that up, and I kind of want to do a follow-up. Do you think that AI is contributing to cultural appropriation when it comes to being in those funding spaces?
Yeah, I think it's engaging in cultural appropriation in general, but also, it's a problem with how AI is built. It's takes the information that's out there, and if 90% of the information that's out there is wrong and racist, what it spits out is also going to be wrong and racist. So it ends up not being a useful tool for anything that is Native specific. Even if you give it prompts that tell it not to do that, those things will still work their way into the output, whether that's visual imagery or written text.
Yeah, thank you for that. And if anybody else wants to add on to the conversation, feel free to. But I really appreciate how you talked on the importance of data sovereignty, because that's a conversation that's coming up a lot with AI now. So thank you for that, Bilahuk. Did anybody else want to add on before we move on to our next question? Okay, awesome. Thank you guys for that. I appreciate how you all have brought up the interconnectedness of artwork and culture and how it shapes community and vice versa, even including not policing how we support community needs, because the people seeking these funds know their people best. So therefore, they can address the needs in their communities to the best of their knowledges and abilities with their kinship ties. So my final question for you guys is, in what ways have you seen art being utilized in philanthropic spaces, and how do you see the use of it expanding over time? And whoever wants to start us off, feel free to.
What did you, Evan? Tell me what were you thinking about? You're thinking about when you think about art being utilized. What did you have in mind? I'm just trying to think of how to come at the question.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the main point of view I'm coming from is, as a young artist and somebody who is now getting introduced to these philanthropic spaces and seeing how there's literally a space in philanthropy for all Native people, whether you're an artist, whether you're a community organizer, whether you're working directly in your hands with the funds. I was just curious as to how you guys see artwork and the use of artists, specifically Native artists, continuing to grow in these philanthropic spaces, just in general. Kind of interpret the question to your own different experiences and backgrounds. I'm just interested to hear you guys' perspectives. And I can repeat the question again if you guys need me to. I know it was kind of loaded.
Well, I was thinking about, okay, how are we going to define art? And then how are we going to define philanthropic spaces? And like, oh gosh, where am I going with this?
Right, yeah.
So it's like our philanthropic organizations using art, and is it an appropriate use? Sometimes that's, it's art is a way of providing another way of understanding for people. And like, I'm going to talk about art even inclusive of like, say, film and television, right? Because like, I think we should, like, that's also an art. And that's one of the ways in which people can really come to understand something new on a large scale. If we talk about like the television series Dark Winds or Reservation Dogs, like that's giving like globally a greater understanding of Native peoples by having those art forms out there in the public. But, are Reservation Dogs or Dark Winds part of the philanthropic, like visibly? No, not necessarily. So it's like how using and what's the relationship to, I mean, I think about like odd things maybe that say sometimes museums do, or say the national parks where they want a Native artist to like sit out front of the building and demonstrate a traditional practice for a largely non-Native audience. So like, is that, to what degree is that potentially extractive? To what degree is that helpful for the public? There's a lot. I don't know, somebody else.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, it was a very loaded question, so I appreciate that. One of the biggest things you guys continue to mention and that I've picked up on is the fact that you're always prioritizing what it looks like to be good kin. So if I could reframe the question a little bit, is what would you hope the future of artwork in these spaces that you guys are working with would look like, and what do you want to imagine it to look like? If that's a better reframing of the question for you guys.
I guess for me, like, I'm just thinking about how art is, I don't know, I can't really separate it from the person, like the thing, like the piece and the person, because I think we're talking also about people and relationships. And I think in philanthropy, art is, being used to convene people across different sectors. I think it supports healing and cultural continuity. It informs public policy to some degree. And it creates spaces where communities can imagine different futures together. I think that's especially true for in Indigenous communities, where artistic practice has always been connected to language and land, ceremony, governance, and intergenerational knowledge systems, and it's not separate from them. And I guess to that, I hope that continues to expand. And so rather than seeing artists simply as grant recipients or storytellers, I think philanthropy has an opportunity to recognize artists as researchers, strategists, creating strategies. I think that they are also organizers, people with pretty expansive knowledge systems, whose work can really help shape solutions. I think sort of incorporating creatives and artists into sort of these different modes and looking to them as also part of the solution, to help these sort of really complex social environmental challenges. I hope that's where the direction goes for the future of artists in sort of the philanthropic space.
That's such a great
Yeah,
answer,
thank you
Heidi.
for that. That was an amazing answer, and it brings me back to how Shondine earlier said we work in generations, not administrations. And I think it really just ties back to how our people have always been futurists. We've never solely thought about just how we're standing in time and space alone, but we think back to what our ancestors did to pave the way for us to get to this position, and how we're also going to pick up the mantle and take on that work for the next generations to come afterwards. So that was a really beautiful answer to my question. So thank you. Sean, did you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, this is just going down maybe a little bit of a different path, but for foundations, Luce is one of these foundations. Terra is another one. Mellon has been another one that fund museum-based work focused on Indigenous objects, communities, etc. And I think I guess the thing I was going to try to say is that there is a lot of work to be done by foundations in advocating for repatriation. I think that and going beyond simply kind of legally required NAGPRA required repatriation, thinking much more broadly about that. And Heidi was just talking about the collection. That's a great example. A lot of those objects are not subject to NAGPRA. A lot of those were produced for the market. Nonetheless, they have meaning, right, for the people who made them and the families who made them. They're part of a history, a familial history, a community history, and a story. And so for those objects to go back, I think is incredibly powerful. And I think it's really incumbent on foundations, on funders that fund museum work to help themselves, but also museums kind of get over this notion that the object comes first, that their primary responsibility is to the object instead of to the story or the culture that the object is part of, or the community that the object is part of. It's a big, in philanthropy, folks who come out of museum world, folks who come out of the curatorial space, I think it is such an enormous leap for them to stop thinking about themselves as stewards of object collections and start thinking of themselves as protectors of community and culture. Or contributors to protecting community and culture, and that's some work that I think really needs to be prioritized going forward.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bilahook. I really appreciate all the knowledges and experiences you guys have shared with us, sharing pieces of your own stories, and allowing us to just learn from each one of you guys' individual expertise. I am going to pass the conversation back over to Mawitache Shondine. I just want to say, Bilahook, thank you for allowing me to spend this time and be in this space with you guys. And I look forward to seeing how you guys continue to shape the work of artwork in philanthropy.
Yeah, Evan, incredible conversation that y'all had. I'm so grateful for Evan. Again, she just got back from a conference in Unity that really highlights our Native youth. So having her dedicate even more of her time, her busy schedule, let's all go. I am so grateful for this conversation and this really re-emphasis on reframing the way that we think about funding and even think about art and culture in general. As we near the end of our time together, I do want to bring into this space a few questions that we've gotten from our live participants. In particular, two I want to uplift. And I'm going to open it to the floor. So if you don't want to address the question, you don't have to. But we did get a question from each of your perspectives. What are critical data points or narratives to share with funders and donors that demonstrate investing in Native arts is sustainable? Which is a beautiful phrasing because it is already sustainable. But really articulating that to people who are interested in supporting is, again, a never-ending journey. So I'm interested to hear from, again, each of your perspectives. Does anything jump out at you immediately when you think of those critical data points or narratives that you use in your day-to-day to advocate?
In terms of, say, numerical data points, one of the things that's like a pretty quick and easy demonstration is the number of bona fide, qualified applications we receive for our programs. So maybe we have 10 awards, but we get 140 applications that are qualified, that are not AI fakes, that demonstrates how much need and interest there is that is being unmet. So that's one of the numerical ways that we can track that. But honestly, a lot of our best data is qualitative data rather than quantitative data. So how funding, and not just the funding, but the relationships that we help people build, what the results of that are collaborations, long-term relationships across regions. Those are some of the best pieces of data that show how this is important, necessary, and contributes to the future.
Yeah, Laura. Does anything else pop up for either of you, Sean or Heidi, when you're, again, advocating for that more sustainable funding?
Well, I think one of the things, this goes back actually to what we were talking about right at the beginning, is the way in which art making in Indigenous communities is integrally connected to language, culture, land, etc., so that we are not that this is not about like, well, gosh, how do we support more oil painters putting I mean, that's okay too, right? There's nothing wrong with oil painting, but this is not about like necessarily just producing kind of autonomous works of art, right? This is about investing in native creativity and native genius in a way that feeds back into and nourishes sort of a wide range of Indigenous cultural activities and expressions. So we had Teresa Secord, who's a Penobscot basket maker, was a loose Indigenous Knowledge Fellow, makes gorgeous baskets, and has been well recognized for them. I mean, it's very sustainable in the sense that she is able to sell her work and support herself in that way. But the thing that she wanted to do when she received the Luce Fellowship was to actually use basket making as a way to teach Penobscot language. That was there are terms in weaving and basket making that are unique to that. And so trying to sort of marry those two together so that the process of making baskets also becomes the process of rejuvenating and revitalizing language. And I think you see that across communities and across art forms, where the art form is just inextricably connected in lots of different ways with lots of different knowledge modalities within the community, lots of different kinds of cultural expressions, lots of different aspects of community.
Yeah, I really appreciate, again, we continuously come back to that inevitable question of, or acknowledgement that arts and culture is so ingrained, it's so interconnected. So really being able to articulate the ways in which one specific story, for instance, that basket making and language revitalization project, is so helpful for people who may not understand exactly how it is all intertwined. So I appreciate you uplifting, those specific instances that are helpful in conveying how integrated arts and culture is truly to Native communities. In a similar vein, we also had a question on the challenges of defining what impact means, and particularly in the situation when artists apply for funding. So I'm interested if you have, and again, open this to the floor, if you have any immediate thoughts when you think of the challenges of really defining what impact means in a philanthropic sense. Do you use the word in your day-to-day? Is it something that you steer away from?
Well, we get forced to use that term, but like think about it, it's like a car crash. And our goal is not to create car crashes. Like an impact is, implying an external force. And our concerns are, community and cultural sovereignty of communities being building their own values, choosing the direction that they want to go, artists choosing their own direction. So in some ways, we don't want to steer really specifically beyond things that are like consistent with your cultural values, because we're an intercultural organization. Like, it's not my job as a Cherokee person to tell a Dene person how to make their work or like steer the impact. Like, that should always be up to the applicant and what their goals are. But in terms like impact in a bigger sense, we could point to the ways in which what we're doing in the Native arts, Indigenous arts ecology, is having an impact in the larger art world. So I'm hearing more even mainstream institutions talk about arts ecologies. The term culture bearers originated with Native arts funders, like First Peoples Fund. And then structures like really rethinking what artists in residencies should do, paying artists a living wage, covering their travel, housing them, making residencies family friendly. Those originated with Native-led and Native-serving programs. But what we find is that the things that we build that are specifically for Native artists and Native communities work really well everywhere else in the art world too. And for such a small, we're such a small percentage of the population, we're really having an impact on some of the ways mainstream institutions are starting to structure their programs.
Yeah, Laura, I am getting so many different questions in the chat, which is always so exciting, but we're running short on time, and I want to ensure that I give you all space to really hone in on key takeaways that you want our audience to walk away from this conversation. We start every member education session with the acknowledgement that there is not only an opportunity for everyone who is listening in or joining to be able to actively engage and support in the work. And I want to reiterate that we have such a diverse audience joining us here today, whether they come from government, federally or tribally, from just community leadership in general, our Native youth, or our elders who are passing on that information and that cultural knowledge. We have people at the intersection of Indian country in general, and again, allies in this space who want to engage meaningfully. So I open the floor. Maybe I will start with Laura. If there is one thing that you would like our very diverse audience to walk away from in this conversation, I offer that to you.
Art is a bigger category than we've been taught in school.
Intergrained. I love it. Heidi, I pass it to you.
Oh man, I'm in the hot seat. I don't have a really cool one sentence takeaway. I can say though that supporting initiatives like Laura. Thank you, Laura, for reminding me in my slight grogginess about the work at ATOM that's happening. That's really important. So if you are a native or non-native person, institution, organization, and you're interested in supporting this work, I'll put a link in the chat. I'm not sure if maybe your staff can help share it with the larger audience. But it's currently in a phase where we're sort of in conversation and developing initiatives that really have a long-term impact on how we can better support Native artists, both from a Native and non-Native institutional perspective. So I encourage folks to, get involved in that. There's still time, and the ATOM conference is in September. So yeah, thank you.
Such beautiful opportunities to meet these people in person and the teams that are moving the work forward. So I appreciate you sharing that research. We absolutely can add the link from ATOM in our email out to folks, as well as in below in the webinar description. Sean, I offer it to you. What feels most important for this audience to take away from this conversation?
So this will be addressed, I guess, to members of the audience who are funders themselves or funder adjacent, I guess. I think it's really critical for funders to remember that giving the money away is only part of your obligation. You also have an obligation to be an advocate and an evangelist. And especially in the Indigenous culture funding space, we need more funders to say, this matters, this is important. We funders have an obligation to do this. In other words, we need to spread the gospel of investment in Indian country. And it's great to get the money out there. We have to do that. And the more, the better, and the faster, the better. And we need to be growing that pot. And we can do that by advocating with our colleagues.
I appreciate the specific call to allies and funders in this space. Truly, this conversation has been among my favorite. I won't single it out as my favorite member education session, but among the top favorites, just because of really the transparency that y'all held with our community in the work that you do and the work that needs to be done. There is so much progress, again, that we have made in this space, but there's so much further that we can take it. So I appreciate you sharing just the aspects of that potential that are most exciting to you. Ahiahat Nitsago for each of you for sharing your space and your voice with our community here today. Thank you so much to each of you.
Thank you.
If I can call on Oakley to help close out our conversation, I will just note for each of our network members who are interested in diving into more nuanced conversations about the integration of language revitalization, we have different webinars listed in our YouTube that can also serve as resources, but this is a step one in your journey. So I'm excited to see where y'all take this. Oakley, over to you.
Yes, Pilama Mayaye to all of you, everybody who joined, and to everybody who spoke today. It was great to listen to you guys. Just some typical housekeeping things. If you registered for this member education session, you will receive a follow-up email that offers more opportunities to get involved and deepen your relationship with those at the front lines of sustaining our cultural bearers. Make sure to check your inbox for more resources and ways to connect. We appreciate your continued support in our ongoing programming, and in particular, your support for our member education sessions. As a reminder, this session was open to the public as a highlight of our member benefits. NAP membership is open to Indigenous relatives and non-Indigenous allies. If you're not a NAP member yet and want to learn more, please visit our website at nativephilanthropy.org or email us at membership@nativephilanthropy.org. Lastly, registered attendees will receive an email with a link to a short survey. Please take a few moments to share your opinions and what you'd like this session series to look like. It should take about 5 to 6 minutes to complete, but provides invaluable feedback to our team and planning. We are continuing our public webinar sessions next month, so mark your calendars for August 19th as we uplift those that have invested years of relationship building and strategic planning in establishing sustainable initiatives. We invite you to join the next member education session on partnership success stories as we invite community leaders with years of experience in developing long-term relationships to share lessons learned and advice for how to plan effectively for the next 7 generations. Until then, thanks again for joining us and have a great afternoon.